You've heard of the Wright brothers, Charles Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart. All of these people have made major contributions to modern day flying. First plane, first nonstop flight from New York City to Paris, and the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic. Again, all of these are major accomplishments. But do you know where the first commercial passenger flight took place? Or maybe who even was the first federally licensed pilot? Well, what if I told you that St. Petersburg and Tampa were at the center of it all? So, about that, hey, it's Katie, and welcome to another episode of So About That, where we take questions and find answers about our community. So, the Tampa Bay area has a pretty large footprint in the aviation industry. We have several airports in the area, and we're home to MacDill Air Force Base. So, how did Tampa become a hub for aviation? Well, let's go back more than 100 years, back to the 1910s. During this time, airplanes were just starting to be used for transporting cargo, racing, and flying longer distances. Flying passengers as a business hadn't started yet until Percy Fancler came along. Fancler was an engineer from Jacksonville and had a vision of creating the first commercial airline. He convinced several St. Pete businessmen and the Board of Trade to invest in this new airline, and it would fly from St. Pete to Tampa. Well, he was pretty convincing because he got the city of St. Pete to agree to provide a $2,400 subsidy over the course of 3 months. So, St. Petersburg Tampa, or SPT Airboat Lines, was born. The airline had a fleet of 2 Benoit Type 14 biplanes built by Tom Benoit. The engines could generate about 75 horsepower and had 1 passenger seat. It's basically an early version of a seaplane, as it was able to take off and land on the water. They had the airline, the plane, and now they needed the pilot. Benoit recruited one of the best, Tony Janis. The federal government required a license for pilots flying commercial flights, so Janis became the first ever federally licensed pilot. On January 1st, 1914, a crowd of 3,000, and that was a lot at the time considering the population of St. Pete was around 7,000, gathered near the municipal pier in St. Pete to watch the flight take off. That single passenger seat was auctioned off and won by St. Pete Mayor Abe File for $400. For reference, $400 in 1914 would be about $11,700 in 2022, a steep price to pay to fly across Tampa Bay. The pair flew at 60 miles an hour at an altitude of about 50 feet. Janis even stopped at some point in the bay to adjust the propeller drive chain. Janis and File touched down on the Hillsborough River in Tampa, greeted by an even larger crowd of 3,500 people. The return trip to St. Pete only took 20 minutes, beating out an estimated 8 to 12-hour train ride. And forget about driving back then. Researchers say hand-cranked engines and unpaved roads meant the car ride could take 20 hours. After the first flight, the airline made daily trips across the bay, charging $5 each way per passenger and $5 for 100 pounds of freight. Today, $5 is almost $150. And $5 was a lot of money back then as it is now. It would barely cover the cost of the airline's operations. Over the course of 3 months, the tourist season started winding down, so the airline scaled back operations at the end of March in 1914. They would still fly upon request, but reduced their daily schedule. Was the airline profitable? Not really. Historians estimate the airline came close to breaking even and was self-sustaining for 2 of the 3 months it was operational. But that wasn't really the goal for Benoit, who said he was okay with making less of a profit if it meant demonstrating the capability and practicality of aerial transportation. He added, "Someday people will be crossing oceans on airliners like they do on steamships today." Well, he was right. The first commercial airline may have not have been profitable, but it did mark the start for a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the Tampa Bay area was at the center of it all because of a community who embraced the future and aviation technology. Do you ever have any questions about the Tampa Bay area, or maybe just why things are the way they are? Well, send me your questions. I want to hear from you. You can email me at mjones@10tampabay.com, or you can find me on Twitter at KatieJonesTV. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment below, and hit that subscribe button because we have new episodes dropping every week from this series, our Welcome to Florida series, and Jenna's investigative series, What's Brewin', all here on The Deeper Dive.